Okay, here we continue with section 4. We're going to look at the people who make up Louisiana, or at least the people who historically and the ethnic groups that founded the many lands throughout Louisiana. We're going to look at those different people groups. We'll look at the Acadians. We'll look at Creoles and the Anglos, people who came from just all over the world that came here to start a new life, to have land opportunities in the New World. People who were encouraged to come here from when the French were originally here, or the Spanish were originally here, or whenever Louisiana was purchased by the French, or even afterwards when Louisiana became part of the Union in 1812, when it became part of the United States. So a lot of motivating factors brought people to our land. As of today, and we're actually going to look at a recent census here before we look at anything. This is from 2000, which is still very current. I know those are 2012 census, and the numbers aren't drastically different. You can pretty much look at this and say we're 50-50. Male and female within our state. The age groups you can see here divided up on the pie graph. From those who are under 10, 15%, pretty standard numbers. Larger the population is, 35 to 54, and then after 54, once you start hitting in around senior citizen age, the numbers start becoming smaller. So 55, 64, and then oddly you see those who live past 64 in Louisiana tend to be a larger percentage. So if you could make it through these years right here, it looks your chances for living over 65 is pretty good in Louisiana. Okay, looking at our ethnic groups. An ethnic group is a group of people who share common traditions, beliefs, and patterns of living that include language, religion, customs, and food. The people of Louisiana are much more diverse than some tourists expect to meet. So there's a very big difference between all the different people that live in Louisiana. We're not all just raging Cajuns. We are a mix of people here in our awesome state. The first group we're going to look at is the Acadians, and that's going to bring us to have to look at the map way over here, because we're going to talk about something that you may not have been presented before in any of your previous classes. We'll talk about a place called Nova Scotia. And yes, this little place way up here where it looks like there will be a lot of cold weather and maybe not a whole lot up here. Some early colonies here actually made it to Louisiana as well. So we look at the French Canadians, how they migrated to Louisiana in the 18th century when the English gained control of the province of Acadia, which is Nova Scotia. So the French were there at one time, and then then the British came in, kicked out the French, and these people had to move. So these people from Acadia, their exile became an important episode in the history of Louisiana. The French-speaking people in Acadia, the farmers, made their way to the bayous and prairies of the region of Acadiana. So they came down here to Louisiana, to the Acadiana. That's that raging Cajun, the Cajun region that we looked at previously. In fact, the word itself, Cajun, comes from a French word. Acadian, said in a French accent, the people of Acadia. On the map here to the right, you see there's 22 parishes that form this triangle of Cajun culture. If you may remember in the previous section, it referred to a triangle of Cajun culture. And this is where it talks about. You got the four corners here, these parishes. So all of these being the Acadian parishes. The many descendants of the first Acadians who migrated to Louisiana proudly preserved their language and their customs. This is that French language, that French Creole that they tried to preserve and work really hard on preserving. So if you're familiar with the term French Creole, this is what we're looking at right there. Continuing with the African Americans, many came here from Africa, from the West Indies, sold into slavery. The African American population came to Louisiana in several different ways. The first slaves, So the first Africans that came here, yes, they were slaves, brought to colonial Louisiana from West Africa. One of Louisiana's most famous foods, the gumbo, is a gift from these Wolof and Bambara people. The word itself means okra, a vegetable used in the soup. Other slaves were brought from the French colonies of the West Indies, which a lot of us don't really know where the West Indies are. I was asking that the other day, and nobody had a clue. So I put it in right here, and the easiest thing, the West Indies are the places that we cruise. This is here, the Antilles, part of the Greater Antilles. I say Antilles, I apologize. The Antilles. These island chains throughout here, these are the West Indies. These are the areas, Bahamas particularly. These are the areas that Columbus had landed in, thinking that it was the West Indies. And the name just kind of stuck. So all these island chains throughout here are largely where most of the African Americans of Louisiana came from. So to come from Africa and to here, and then from here, they would have made their way to Louisiana. They brought features of their African culture, special dialects of French, got mixed with the African language, and is known as Creole, a type of African French language, Creole. But not all people of African heritage in Louisiana were slaves. So very exciting to hear that those who were free during the years of slavery were called free people of color. Communities of the descendants of this culture thrive in several sections of the state today. They consider themselves Creoles, referring to their connection to the days when Louisiana was a colony. The term referred to African French people born in the colony instead of in Europe or Africa. So you have these African French people. And St. Landry Parish is the home of several large Creole communities. They continue to speak French, as their ancestors did during colonial times. Zydeco music, with its French lyrics, is one of the contributions to the world culture. Come from the African American Creoles. Okay, American Indians, of course, were here. Had different Indian groups. Many of us are familiar with the Tunica, the Biloxi, and the Homa Indians, the Choctaw. These are ones that we see more often than others in our area. Okay, we go and we're looking at the Anglos. These are people that came from the British colonies of the East and made it to Louisiana. This English-speaking heritage included people who were Scots-Irish, who migrated to Louisiana and established farms in the hill country of North Louisiana. So if you remember back to the other video, the Anglo-Saxons, remember they were from the Celtics. These Anglos, North Louisiana. Okay. The culture here is described as upland South. The accent is Southern, and they are Protestant. So, or at least historically speaking, it's North Louisiana that was mostly Protestant. It is Southern Louisiana that was largely Roman Catholic because of its French and Spanish heritage. The low-lying lands along the rivers were perfect for the establishment of plantations. Anglos from other southern states and from New England settled in these areas, and the plantation culture that developed is described as Lowland South. This Lowland South culture existed along the Mississippi River, as well as along the Red and the Washita rivers in the northern part of the state. This also includes what's called the river parishes, those along the Mississippi River parishes. These along the Mississippi River are known as where the majority of the plantations were. It's another fact that you can pick up right now about plantation area, river parishes. We have a local community college that's named after that cultural concept right there, that cultural region even right there. The Germans, we had the Germans that immigrated to Louisiana during the early colonial years. However, they did not retain their language and soon blended with the dominant French culture. So those early Germans, the German culture didn't stay as strong as the French culture. And the Germans adapted to the French culture. More Germans arrived in the 19th century. A group of these Germans, German foreign families, settled in Acadia Parish and created the community of Robert Cove. Their grandchildren continued to preserve elements of German heritage. On December 6th, a procession celebrating the religious feast of St. Nicholas goes from house to house, one of their historical festives. Remember, we associate with the Germans whenever we're talking about the different festivals. We had Oktoberfest that's associated with the Germans. Okay, continuing. The Hispanics, a very unique and special group to Louisiana, is the Islenos. The Islenos, it means islanders. So the question that comes into mind is, what island are they from? They're from here, the Canary Islands. Now, these are islands off of Spain, places that you may not have looked at yet in any geography courses. But here you have West Africa. This is like Morocco right here. And here's Spain. Here's Portugal. These islands are part of Spain. These Canary Islands are part of Spain. So these were Spanish people from these islands that left those islands and came to the New World, and they settled most in like around the St. Bernard Parish area. St. Bernard Parish area. Very unique culture. The Islenos community around Swally in Sabine Parish traces its ancestry to the Spanish colony of Texas. So there is Texas ties. Some Islenos having gone to Texas, some to Louisiana, in those around those St. Bernard Parish area. In the 20th century, an influential Cuban community developed in New Orleans after Castro's revolution had drove them from Cuba. The most recent Hispanic immigrants have come from Mexico. So historically speaking, first Hispanics came from the Canary Islands. That's what it's talking about right here. Canary Islands, these are the Islenos. And then also we have some that have come in and associated with the Texas culture. And then Cuba. And with Castro, that's early 20th century. So we're looking at, with Castro, I think maybe starting in the 1940s. And then most recent of the Spanish people is from Mexico. Most recent from Mexico. We have the Italians. The Italians are another large group of immigrants in the 19th century. These new arrivals became farmers, raising vegetables and strawberries. Outside of New Orleans, the largest group of descendants live in Independence in Tangipahoa Parish. So, in Tangipahoa Parish, largest group of Italian descendants. Italians contributed in a few ways. St. Joseph's altar to Louisiana culture. That's one of their customs. The altar is a thank you for blessings of the past year. The altars are set up sometimes in homes and sometimes in churches. Brought from Sicily, an Italian tradition. The tradition includes a feast for friends and strangers. Each visitor is given a dried fava bean for good luck until the next year. Very cool cultural celebration. Some other ethnic groups. You have the Croatians that came to Louisiana. They're from the Adriatic Sea. They're just, think, Eastern Europe. Also, you have those who live in, I pronounce it Plaquemine, but here in the textbook it's called Plaquemines Parish. They share the region with Filipino immigrants. So we have Croatians, we have Filipinos. We also have some Vietnamese communities all throughout Louisiana. We have Chinese immigrants throughout Louisiana. And you see most of them are participating in work lifestyles along the coastline. We also have people from the Czech Republic, some Czechs in Rapids Parish, which is not along the coastline. This one's different. We have some in Livingston Parish, right next to Ascension, very close to us, from Hungarian communities. And these Hungarian communities, there is a festival that goes on in, it's actually not Livingston, I can't remember what parish is it now, but they have, this is another one with festivals in Louisiana. This one wasn't mentioned before. We also have people who are Arab, Greek, and from India, the original Indians. Families, culture is preserved not only by regions and communities, but also by families. Often they come together to share their heritage and pass it along. The tradition of family reunions continue and grows in Louisiana. Now, some of y'all can bring that literally home, and you do this maybe yearly, maybe every couple of years. A strong sense of family reunions. In the small North Louisiana town of Dubac in Lincoln Parish, the Colvin family reunion has been held annually since the beginning of the 20th century. Relatives gather there from across the United States to share food and memories. You and your family also contribute to the unique culture of Louisiana, the traditions of the past combined with the customs of today, your music. So think of your own family. Think of the music y'all listen to. Maybe it's local, or maybe it's just something that's larger that people throughout the United States listen to. Think of the food you eat as a family, your clothing. Think of the language and the accents that you have, type of games that you play, and the sports that you participate in. They all blend into a cultural picture of our state. Okay, this is the end of a broad look at Louisiana.